Imagine being 19 years old, newly married, cut off from your family, your church, and everything you were ever told was truth, all in the name of choosing your own life. Because what happens when love forces you to question everything you were raised to believe? Welcome back to the Unholier podcast. Today's episode is not just about religion, it's about what it costs to walk away from it. My guest today is Kristin. Her and I share a very similar story, growing up in the independent fundamentalist Baptist movement, where your life is mapped out before you even know who you are. She went to Crown College, met the man she would marry, and when their relationship wasn't approved, they made a decision that would change everything. They got married at 19, left the church, and lost not just their faith structure, but their families and their entire community. So what does that actually look like to rebuild your life, your identity, and even your relationship with God from scratch? This is a conversation about love, loss, deconstruction, and what it really means to choose yourself, even when it costs everything. So let's get started. Kristin, so you and I grew up in the same type of environment, the IFB cult, right? We know the rules without even having to explain them to each other. When you look back now, what's something that world still, like in that world, that still blows your mind that we were taught was normal?
Oh my goodness. So many things. How long do you have for this podcast? For real. So I think one of the biggest things reflecting back on it, because obviously I was a girl, not quite a woman in that cult, was the really stark difference between the way I grew up and the way the boys grew up. And we were given no voice, we were given no autonomy, we were given no room to be ourselves, yet had all of the responsibilities placed on us. So no power, but all the weight. And what I mean by that is there was no room for girls to talk within the church, right? Like we didn't have a voice within the church, especially as a child, but then as a woman, besides like women's Bible study and things like that. But then we were also told that it was our job as girls to have the purity of boys as the forefront of our minds. So, like what we wore, the way we acted, the way we presented ourselves, we could make a boy, but also the men stumble. So, we had all this power, supposedly, right? Because we had the power to make grown men lust after us, but we weren't allowed any power. So, it's like, that I think is what blows my mind is just that stark difference of we were told we had no power, but then we do have power because we're making grown men stumble. So it just didn't make sense. It was such an impossible world to live in as a girl because there was no winning. There was no winning in any scenario. You were wrong all of the time. There was nothing that you could do right unless you were living perfectly, but who's perfect? No one. But girls were expected. So those expectations of girls and women is just an impossible situation. So for me, as I reflect back, that's probably the thing that blows my mind the most is just the impossible world that we were given to live in. And yet we were supposed to do all of the right things all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And then you have like you compound that with like purity culture, of course.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's like you really they really set like this goal that is unattainable for females within the church, within and it's not just ISB. Like I know there were other evangelical religious organizations that were also doing this, like the Southern Baptist churches and the Pentecostal churches, Assemblies of God, Mormon churches do it, all of that. But the purity culture was pushed on us girls so hard. And it was like, if a boy even lusted after you are a man, it was all on us. It was our
Yes.
fault. So
Yes.
it was like we were in this. I wish y'all could see, like, maybe I'll post some pictures in this episode or in like reels that we release for this episode of like Kristin when she grew up in the IFB. I know I've posted pictures on my social medias, just like we look so frumpy. It's like, how could any
Yes.
guy lust after that? But apparently
Yes.
they're uncontrollable animals and we are to blame for that.
Yes, because that's what was taught. We
Yeah.
were taught that men were carnal, that this was just by nature how they were. So they couldn't control themselves. So that's why they put that responsibility on the women and the girls, is because it's kind of funny when I think about it now. Like, were they animals? It's kind of what they're saying, but they're not. But it's like
Yeah.
you have zero control, so you're an animal, but you're putting all that responsibility on me, but you've given me none of the power. So that right there, when you just look at that, that is impossible to
Yeah.
deal with, because you literally don't have power, but you're given all of the responsibility and the weight. So the weight of that is really difficult.
It is. And I just remember just feeling like I don't even know, like when I got out of the IFB, I was like, I don't even know who I am. I don't know, like, who is Jennifer Bartlett. I don't know who she is. I don't know what kind of music she likes. I don't know if she likes tequila or vodka or both. I don't know if she likes to dance or if she likes yoga or if she likes traveling, or we weren't able to do any of that stuff. And so it's also like, let's talk about just like finding your identity within that. And then I want to dive into, after we talk about this for a second, we'll circle back and we'll go back into kind of your experience in the IFB, because I know you went to Crown College and I want to get into all that too. But just talking about, I know I'm like all over the place, but girl, we're just going to sit here and trauma dump
Yes.
with each other. It's
I love
fine.
it. I love it. I'm here for it.
Um, so yeah, just talking about like, how did you discover who Kristin was after you left the IFB?
Yeah, so backtracking a bit, because I think it's really important, especially if listeners aren't familiar with the IFB and the reason why it's so challenging when you come out of it to actually find an identity. You are taught from the
Mhm.
pulpit on a Sunday morning. You could be there dressed all nicely, and the preacher is preaching, and they're talking about a baby being born. And I like to say, we like to say, oh, babies are beautiful and sweet, and oh, he was preaching about that. No, this particular message was, you are born sinful, that you literally come into this world as a sinner. So basically, evil, right?
Yeah.
So automatically off the bat, you are in the wrong, and you are not good until you're saved. And then once you're saved, you're not good still, because everything about you is carnal and
Right.
evil. But God working through you can do good. So if I get a compliment, oh, Kristin, you did really good on your singing today. Oh, thank God. I'm so thankful that
Right.
God gave me that talent, because it's not me. I'm not talented. God
Yeah.
is doing it through me. So when you leave, and then depending on your belief system, now I will say, when I first got out, I think we talked about this before. I was one of those that I really, really believed. I really bought into the system. I didn't question a whole lot. I did question like the hate and things like that, because that never sat well with me just as a human. But I believed everything. And so when I left, it really took me a long time. I thought I was evil. I genuinely did. I actually journaled a lot of this. And when bad things would happen to Nick and I, we were newly married, I genuinely believed I was being punished for a really, really long time. And so it took me a long time to separate that from what I actually believed. So depending on the belief system you move out of, you either have don't believe in God anymore. So then what are you left with? Nothing. Because if you don't even have God, and you were taught that the only thing good in you is God, you are left with a shell. There's nothing there. And I gave up a lot of things for the religion. I gave up figure skating at one point. That was my world. I did it from the age of 3 to 13. And it was something that was my dream, and I gave it up for that. And so I gave up any part of my identity for this religion. I just didn't exist after I gave up the figure skating. So when I left, I'm struggling with what I even believe about myself. I think I'm evil. And then when I don't believe really in a God or anything like that, at one point, now I'm left with nothing, because now I don't believe anything. So
Mhm.
that's where I was at. And so now coming to where I'm at, it was just step by step, to be honest with you. One of the things that I really struggled with was being feminine and being presenting that way, because in that cult environment, femininity meant you were less than a man. It meant that you had to submit to men, that you were meek and quiet. And so everything was really negative about it. So when I worked in the professional world, I gravitated towards pants, because I was like, oh, I can't wear skirts anymore. I can't wear dresses anymore, because it has all of these negative connotations to it. I don't even know what I like. So I remember when I finally decided that I was going to wear a dress, I was in a director's position and I was young director. So I'm like, I need to feel powerful. So I went and tried on a dress and put on a blazer and I was like, oh my God, I love this pair of heels, this really amazing kind of flouncy dress, but with a blazer over to make it really professional. I felt amazing. And I was like, okay, I actually really like being feminine. I love, the glitz and the glam and the dresses and the heels. And I love all of that. So I had to reclaim that for me. I took
Mhm.
something that had a lot of negative to it and made it for me and made it okay to like it. So that's kind of what I've done along this process. And it has taken me so long because so many things had negative connotations to it. So it just took me separating the fact of, okay, is this trauma brain, Kristin? I know you and I both know what this is about. Is this
Yes.
trauma brain, Kristin, or is this healed, Kristin? Do I like it or do I not like it? So I tell everybody, one, to be really easy on themselves, because when you're brainwashed as a child, those are there. Like, those thoughts are
Yeah.
just part of your who you are and how you developed. And so that's what makes it so difficult to separate with what was reality versus what were you brainwashed into thinking. So it was one step at a time, figuring out the things that I liked. I just, for the first time, when I was listening to your episode, I got such a kick out of you talking about going to clubs and dancing. So yes, I loved that because my
Yeah.
husband and I, for the first time, because my husband was a pastor's kid, as we've talked, so he grew up the same way. For the first time, went last year dancing together ever.
Yay! Oh my
And
gosh, that's so amazing.
I am telling you, to see him, okay? Because if you
Yeah.
knew him, you would know. Like, he's very opposite of me. He's very subdued. He's very logical. I'm like all over the place. So for me, it's not that hard to imagine.
Yeah.
But both of us, we just let loose and we just had fun. And I'm like, this is amazing. And everybody's laughing because here at the time I was 39. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're out at 2 o'clock in the morning at 39,
Heck yes.
going out dancing. And I'm like, yes. And it is the best thing ever. I have more energy now than I did in like my late 20s. It's really funny. I'm like, I think the universe was like, you know what? She had a lot of crap. I'm going to kiss her and be like, I'm going to give her energy. I'm going to make her feel good so she can go out and have fun.
Yes, I love that. Oh my gosh. I discovered that dancing is like one of my favorite things to do. In fact,
Yes.
after I left the IFB and got divorced, I was flipping through this ad in the newspaper one day. It makes me sound really old, but I got this little ad in the mail, and I was like, it was like a local little newspaper that they put in the mailbox. And I saw this ad for a community college that was offering adult hip hop dance classes. And
I saw it. I heard about that in one of your episodes. I was like, yes.
I'm like, sign me up. And let me tell you,
Yes.
I did that for 5 years, and it was the funnest thing I've ever done as far as
I
like
love that.
being active and doing something with people that I didn't even know. I met so many new people. And that's the thing, like when you get out, it's like it's a whole new world, not just like
Yes.
figuring things out, but you're taught like, oh, people who are unsaved and people who are in the world, they're evil, they're this, they're that.
Yes.
And it's like, maybe
No.
there are some people that are like that, sure, but there are a
Yeah.
lot of people like that in the church. But the majority of people that I have met outside of
Yeah.
the IFB have been genuinely great people and
No.
people that are loyal to me, people that are like my ride or dies, but they're not considered Christian or IFB or whatever. And they're some of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. Yeah,
Yeah.
I joined a dance class, and let me tell you, it was worth it. And then me and my best friend Branda would go clubbing on nights that I didn't have my daughter. We're just like,
Yes.
why not?
That's what I've heard. And I was like, I adore that because I resonate with that. And I think it took me so long to get to this point because I really, one, I got married at 19, right? And I've been married now, it'll be 21 years in May. And so I went from child to smack dab an adult. We got dropped like hot potatoes by our family. So we just had to figure life out, right? So it was hard. It was hard. I won't even lie. It was hard for a really,
Yeah.
really long time. So we were survival mode for a really long time. Then we had our first child, and mom takes precedence, and then I second. And so I've always been in a role of taking care of or just surviving. And so it was really just more recently that I was like, you know what? I have spent my entire life, not that there's anything wrong with that because I love my family and I love my kids, but because of the way I was raised, I just fell into that role and I decided there was nothing more. And then I was like, you know what? It's time for me to think about me. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I have my own life. I do have my family and I love my kids and I love my husband, but who am I? And so it is kind of funny that it has been like this last year and a half that I've been branching out and thinking, okay, what do I like? Obviously, and I've done other things along the way, don't get me wrong, but this has been the first time that I've really focused. And so
Mhm.
one of those things, like I mentioned, I gave up figure skating at a youth camp because, again, I was brainwashed into thinking that God wasn't going to like it because it was something for me. And
Now,
on my
just you
yeah,
said that was at a youth camp?
yes,
Okay, so did you get screamed and preached at and then told that you need to surrender that at the altar because it was
yes.
serving you and not God?
Yes. How'd you
Weird.
know? How'd you know? Yeah. So imagine people, okay, that are listening. Imagine being at youth camp, right? And I like to tell people, oh, you think about like a camp, a summer camp, you're like bonfires and s'mores and the blob and all this stuff. No, no. I mean, there were bonfires, but instead of like s'mores, you're going to laugh at this. I brought contraband with me. And so I had CDs and I was
Yeah,
convicted. Okay. I was convicted because, again, I was one of those. I broke them and threw them into the flipping fire. I think it was like
yeah.
Britney Spears or something like that. Yes.
I
So
love it.
it was one of those, they would keep you up super late at night
Yeah.
and they would just preach and they would preach and they would
I
be
know.
screaming and they'd be passing
It's
around
like
things to like,
hazing. It's like
yes,
hazing. It really is.
yes, it
Yeah.
is. It
They
is.
just want
And
to
so I
break
think I
you
was
down.
Yes, I think I was like 12 at the time. And again, I'd been skating my whole life. I was homeschooled, so I skated like 6 days a week. My goal was the Olympics. And it's a long story, but the
Mm.
pastor of that particular IFB church, this was the one that I call kind of like mid-level IFB before we went into like hardcore IFB, because there are levels, people.
Yes.
He actually had a part-time job at the skating rink because the pastor position didn't pay enough. And so that's where we met him. And it was when I had a brother that passed away. And so it was when he was in the hospital. And again, we all know that, these types of churches prey on people that are in bad positions. But he
Mhm.
saw me skating and he told my family, because normally that would never be allowed. The outfits, the moves that you have to make, like all of that goes really far against what IFB believes in. But that's a God given talent. She is so beautiful when she skates. I can't tell her to give it up. So genuinely, this particular pastor is out of IFB now. He's an amazing man, and I'm really thankful because honestly, I wouldn't have been able to skate as long as I did if he didn't approve, right?
Mhm.
So, but I gave it up at one of those camps because I was told that because it was self-serving, they're preaching to anything that's for you is against God. And again, I'm one of those girls. I believed everything and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. I can't live with myself if I do." So I went to the altar because one of those altar calls where they're all calling you out like, "Oh, you have something, right? Oh no, look at your face. You have something." And anyway,
Mhm.
so I will never forget that moment because my brother was there too, and I was crying and he was crying because it was a really big deal. I mean, everybody knew that was my dream. And I go back to church, and this is the hardest part, to be honest with you. I go back, and the pastor, I was almost put on this big pedestal. Instead of saying, no, God doesn't want you to give that up, which is what I should have been told. I should have been told that if there's, a God, because I don't know what I believe in at this point, but if there's an omnipotent being, I don't think that they would have cared if I was skating or not. But in
Mm.
that moment, my pastor was like, oh my gosh, he knew what the sacrifice was. So he preached sermons about me, putting me up on this pedestal, like, oh my gosh, she's such a godly Christian girl. I didn't want that. I would have wanted someone to be like, no, you don't need to give that up. So now at
Mhm.
this point, I'm being like preached about. I'm definitely not going back at this point because I'm like,
Man.
so I was put so that pressure of now I'm at this other level that there's no way I'm going back, and I never did. Besides like a couple like times where my brother had me go as an adult, and so on my episode with David, I had still hadn't gone back, and he had asked me about it, and I said it's really complicated. And so now looking back, I started right before I turned 40. I was like, you know what? I'm at the point in my life. I want to do it. I'm excited.
Mhm.
I need to do it. So I went and bought skates. And the very first time I went on the ice, I remembered the feeling of the ice underneath my skates and the smell of the ice rink. And the moment my skates hit the ice, it was like coming back home again. It was that feeling
Oh,
of this is where I was meant to be. And it was just amazing. And I will say this, it's challenging because, and this is why it took me so long. When you're a child and you're skating, obviously your body's very different than as an adult. And so I knew going back to it, I was at a very high level. And so I knew going back, I would have to like start over again. And that's really challenging.
mhm.
But I just gave myself the grace to be like, that's not what this is about. It is about reclaiming. And you're going to hear that word probably a million times. That's my
Yeah.
is reclaiming. I have made it my mission to reclaim the things that I was either told I couldn't do or I decided not to do because I was brainwashed into believing, and skating was the biggest piece. So not only am I skating again, but I'm spinning again. I just did my first jump the other day, which I didn't think I'd be this far along in a couple months. So I'm really proud of myself, and it's probably my biggest accomplishment to date coming out of the cult.
That's amazing. And it's probably honestly like the muscle memory is coming back to you. So that's
Yes.
awesome. I
Yes.
love that you did that. I think, and there's nothing wrong with saying reclaiming multiple times because that's honestly what you did. You
Yes.
really did. And so it's like, I always wonder, it's like the Bible talks about like, there's a verse in the Bible, and I'm just gonna like totally butcher it. I'm gonna paraphrase it, but essentially the verse is we as earthly parents want good things for our children. And so much more our heavenly Father wants for us, right? So just like if you're a parent and your kid has a desire to do something as innocent as figure skating, right?
Yes.
You're gonna
Yes.
you're gonna want them to pursue that. You're gonna be like, wow, they're really talented. This is a gift that they have. Like, let's get behind her and let's get her lessons and let's do that, which your parents were doing, right? Apparently.
Yes.
But then it
Yes.
just took that pastor to squash that dream, right? To say, like, nope, your gifts are not yours, they're God's. You got to give them to him.
Yes.
It's not about
Yes.
you. And but again, that concept isn't taught that like as parents, we want our kids to pursue their dreams and their gifts and to hone in on their talents. God also wants that for us too, even more than like our regular parents do. So they don't teach that though, because it doesn't fit within their narrative. Unless you want to be a pastor's wife or a
Yes.
youth pastor's wife or a preacher boy or something like that, then it's okay.
Yes. Well,
Got
and
to
I
fit
think that's the
within that
thing.
mold.
Yes. And I think that's the thing about any of these more fundamentalist, independent, is they are going to go to the extreme in everything. And when you look at the way that that's set up, is the pastor is in control of everything. So,
Mhm.
and they're God's voice, right? So you don't
Right.
question God's voice. So when they're preaching, they're doing it based on what they believe. God believes, right? Because they're hearing from God, but it's all about
Right.
them. It's all about them, their perceptions, and what they want to control. So, depending on the church you're in, and I think that's why when I traveled to different churches, because we lived in different parts of the country, so I experienced different types of IFB, they're all a little bit different
Hmm.
because it's the pastor that's different. If that doesn't give you a clue that maybe they're not doing the right thing because there's no cohesion between all of them, there are things that are in common, but there's a variety because the pastor is choosing what they want. And it's
Hmm.
funny, this is jumping ahead, I know, but at Crown College, or specifically, this made me think of it. Clarence Sexton was the pastor there, and one of the rules was just one of his preferences. So he didn't like the noise that backless shoes made, like flip flops. You
Oh,
could
wow.
not wear them. You could not wear them as a parishioner. You could not wear them as a student because he didn't like the sound. Yes,
Yeah. And that's the thing. Of course, that's a rule for women and girls. No,
yes.
probably very little to no rules for the boys and the men.
Not a lot. I think they couldn't wear shorts because, again, like showing any skin or
Unless
things
they
of
were
that.
playing basketball or
Oh,
something, right? That was
true.
okay. Yeah.
You're
That was always
right.
okay.
Oh my gosh. I didn't think about that, but you're so
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. If they were playing a
Yes.
sport, it was okay then. It was
Mhm.
godly then. It was all right.
Yes.
But any
Yes.
other time, not good. Like you couldn't like
Yes.
wear them just on every day. So yeah, okay, boys, we'll give you a little point there. And then
Yes.
you couldn't have hair past your ears, like it couldn't touch your ears.
Oh, I
Oh my
know.
gosh. And you couldn't
They
have
had it
facial
so
hair.
hard. So
Yeah.
hard.
So they had
Yeah.
like three rules.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's funny because going to Crown College, the boys could live off campus, but the girls, it was like they wanted to
Wow.
keep you like where they could see you at all times. So they have, the way it's set up is like the church and the campus are all together. But where the
Mhm.
church is, right across from that are the houses for the girls. So that's where you stayed, was right there where everybody could see you, where you could be monitored. And I swear to God, they had spies everywhere. And I'm not just making that up, because they would know things that you're like, who is watching me? They would, like, you'd go to the store and people would get in trouble for things there. And it's like,
Mhm.
who do you have? And I know that sounds
Yeah.
crazy, but I'm telling you, they did. It was like, but they, for the women, it really is, they're protecting the purity and all of that other stuff. And we have to make sure that they're not getting into trouble. But you couldn't go off campus unless you had 5 girls and you had to check in and out of a book. There were certain places you couldn't work, and they would actually talk to the employers before you worked there. So there were approved places, and I always wondered to myself, what are they saying to these employers?
Yeah.
I really wanted to know. Like, I don't know to this day, but I do wonder, like, what were those conversations? It's wild.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, it's like even the people in the community, they're gonna know you guys are associated with that church or
Yes.
school because of the way you're dressed. And
Yes.
also you're in a group of five
Yes.
girls anytime you go anywhere. So
Yes.
they're like, those are the weird people, guys. You gotta watch out for them.
Yes.
If they order a drink, then it better not have alcohol in it, or we're gonna call a school and tell on them.
Yes.
If I was one of
Yes.
those people in the community, I would be like, babe, there's those girls from that school. We should totally
Yes.
buy them shots.
Yes. I love that. I love that, because it was really funny. What's interesting about Crown specifically, because as you know, every fundamentalist Baptist like college has a different flavor.
Yes,
Crown was almost, and if I can use this word, it was kind of elitist, kind of. And I know that sounds
sure.
really
They all
crazy.
think they're elitist. That's the
Oh my
funny part about
gosh.
it.
True, but it
Yeah,
felt that way there because it was like the
sure.
girls, there was definitely the in crowd, okay? And
Sure.
everybody
Yeah.
knew that. And the girls were very much like, there were the buttoned up ones that they wore specific things and they carried themselves. Not that there's anything wrong with carrying yourself that way, because I was always like that too. But like the line of girls curling their hair and just the over the top feminine everything. Again, nothing wrong with it, but when you have that many at one school all doing the same thing, it's
Yeah.
almost like Stepford Wives. That's
Yes,
what it is. It's like
it is.
Stepford Wives.
It really is.
Legit. Yes.
Hmm. And that's why it is very culty. Like it was
Yes.
even like that at Bob Jones University where I
Yeah.
went. And we felt like we were elitist in a way too,
Yes.
because we were an older Bible college university, and it
Yes.
was like everyone knew Bob Jones University, at least within the IFB guys. Okay. I mean, I've
Right.
I've had
I was
employers.
very well aware of it. Yes.
Yeah, I have had employers look at my resume before and be like, what is Bob Jones University?
Yes. Crown
Like,
College too.
never mind. You don't want
I
to
don't
know.
put that, I don't even acknowledge that existed anymore. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, unaccredited universities, I mean, they're not really worth the paper that they're written on. So there's that.
nope, exactly.
But yeah, the whole Stepford wife, like that whole mentality of you have to look a certain way.
Yes.
They even encourage the girls to talk a certain way. Did they
Oh,
teach you guys
yes.
that? Okay, let's talk
Yes.
about that.
So it wasn't even at Crown College. That was a little bit, but growing up, my pastor's wife, they had a song, and I wish I could remember the melody of it, but it was like
We had a song.
walking, it was about like walking feminine and talking feminine, and you even smile feminine, and it was a whole like jingle.
That
And
sounds
I was,
straight out of
yes.
hell.
Yes, but that's the way it was in my church. And then going to Crown College, yes, there was a lot of like etiquette. Now, I will tell you this, my grandmother, and she's outside of that religion completely. She was very big into rules. And so you'll notice if you ever meet me in person, I definitely have a lot of etiquette. And my husband now always would say that he thought I was like a princess because of just how I carried myself, because my
Yeah.
grandmother was really strict. And when I was younger, she gave me a book, Emily Post, like this really thick book of all
Yep.
these manners.
It's like the book of etiquette or something like that. I
Yep.
used
Do you
to
know
have that.
who read the whole thing?
Did
Me.
you read the whole thing? It's huge. I used to have that book. I think I sold it in a garage sale.
Yes, I did. But again, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was that or like the combination of the religious cult in that, but I just totally like absorbed all of that.
Yeah.
So I remember, oh my gosh, you're going to laugh at this. So when I met Nick, He grew up very different. And he was like cutting his stuff. I was totally judging him because I'm like, dude,
You're holding
dude.
your utensils wrong.
He looked at me and he was like, what? How are you cutting this? I need to change this. This does not make any sense. And he laughs about it to this day because he was like, I didn't get you, but I loved you. So
Yeah. It's a
but it
good
was,
thing.
yes, it is, but it was very much like in there, just that etiquette, being
Yeah.
feminine, talking a certain way, being meek. But it was really interesting that very in crowd. Oh my goodness, they thought that they were just like the shit. And I wanted
They
to be
did.
like,
Yeah.
"You really aren't, and I was kind of in like that, not quite at that level because my brother was a student there too, and he was an older student. He was very well known. So thankfully, I kind of had that. So it made it easier in the sense that I got away with a couple things that I would have gotten normally in big trouble for
Yeah.
because I had a really good testimony. And that's what they said. They're like, well, you have a good testimony, so we'll believe you. Anybody else probably would have gotten in trouble. So honestly, it saved us a couple times because I'm telling you, if it had been Nick, oh, he would have been kicked out because if it wasn't for me, so it paid off. It paid off that I
Yeah.
I played by the rules because that's something that I joke about when I was on with David too. I told him I said I was a really hard catch because Nick and I met day three at the college there. He was from Michigan and I was from Tennessee, and they had an outing to Ripley's Aquarium. And this was my first time away from home, right? Like I'd never been away from home. And even though it was more strict there than it was at home, it was still different. I was
Yeah.
very adventurous and I just was excited. And I was like, oh, boys, whatever. I wasn't really paying attention. I met a lot of them that day. But then I was reading, I was at the aquarium. So I was like reading something and I looked up and I see him and I gave him a big smile and he walks over and he tells me later, he's like, if you hadn't smiled, I would have never come up to you because I was so intimidated by you. But thankfully you smiled.
Aw.
So I did.
Yeah.
So as cheesy as it sounds, it literally was like I knew him before I even knew him. And we just connected and we spent the rest of the day together. And if you asked anybody there on campus after that point, we were known as like the it couple. Everybody talked about us. Everybody knew we were in love. It was like this instant thing. But he just grew up very different than I did, like with all of that respect. His family was, a lot more poor and didn't have a lot of money. And so it just was two worlds coming together, even though we were both IFB, we were both very different. So it was like we became best friends instantly. And he was really the first person in my life that I genuinely felt safe with.
Aw.
And so it was one of those things where, again, as cheesy as it sounds, it's like love at first sight. We knew that it was meant to be. And I guess 21 years later,
That's amazing.
here we are. But it is a very different story. So I'll tell you a story that I didn't tell David on his podcast. So you
Oh,
get to hear
good.
it. So there was a point where, we're 18-year-olds, people, like, come on. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, things are going to happen, you
You're
know.
hot. You're hot for each other. I get
Yes. Now
it.
you'll laugh though, because I'm going to set this stage. So one, I was very hard to catch because I believed everything. So like I would put Bibles in between us, I put a seat in between us. And he laughs now because he's like, if I didn't love you and I didn't think that you were as beautiful as you were, I would have never done any of that because he didn't believe any of it. But he's
Yeah.
like, I did because I loved
Yeah.
you. So I started there. It didn't end there. Um, at all. So he plays the piano and he played the piano for the choir and I
Oh,
sang
cool.
for the choir. So we're both very musical people. So we would sit at the piano for hours and I would sing and he would play the piano. And so there was like this chapel that was kind of in another building, smaller. And it was later at night. You're not supposed to be alone, as we know, but we were. And we were
Mhm.
sitting in there. We were making out, which I can't believe now that I'm even admitting this. I swore back in the day that I would never admit this to anybody, but now I'm like, whatever.
I love it.
So we were making out in the pew and we heard noise outside. And I'm like, oh my God. I peek out and there's like a cleaning crew coming. And I'm like, oh my God, we're in so much trouble. So this is what we did. Cause you got to think on your feet.
Did
There's a
you have to hide?
piano.
Did you hide?
Oh, it gets good. He goes to sit at the piano because I'm like, okay, we can be in, like, we're just going to make it look like this is as innocent as possible. Because again, I've got a good reputation. He sits at the piano. There's like this little side room that has like these swinging doors. So it's separate technically. So I'm like, you go play the piano. I'm going to sit in there. Like I'm just listening to your music. I'm just in the other room listening to you play. We're not together. They come in, they investigate because they heard voices. They find me. I'm just sitting there. They technically saw nothing. Okay. I held to that flipping story. I held to that story.
Yes.
So obviously the next day someone runs up to us, you've got a meeting with the dean of women. You were caught, blah, blah, blah. I was like,
Oh
oh, okay.
no.
Okay. I can't believe I stayed this good under pressure given my history, but I did. And so I go there and I tell her, I'm like, look, I'm like, I realized that it was late, but I said, I was literally, you can ask the people that found me. I was sitting there, I was listening to his music and him playing. And that's where they were like, you have a really good reputation. Let's not do this again, because then we might have to have a different discussion. So we got out of it, which, as you know, is
Amazing.
a big deal
It is a big deal,
because
yeah.
most of my friends would have gone in really big trouble.
Yeah,
But it
you
was
could have been
one of
expelled.
Yes, yes. So it was one of those things that I look back now, and even though I really told the line, I still had a lot of spunk too, clearly, because, I broke the rules for all the right reasons.
Yeah. Girl, you guys were hot for each other, so I get it. I get it.
Yeah, and we're 18. We are
Yeah.
18. Like you're at the age where hormones are raging and we loved each other and we knew we wanted to be together and he was the first person that I wanted to do anything like that with. Like before then I was like no, 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 and
Yeah.
he was safe and I trusted him and we loved each other and it's like when all those things match it's like
Yeah.
who cares?
Yeah. I get that. My college sweetheart was my first kiss. I mean, I was 19. So,
Yeah,
and I mean,
yeah.
we were, hormonal and hot for each other too. So
Yes,
I get it.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Like, what do you
sneaking around
expect?
any chance we got, it's just the way you
Yes,
figured it out.
you did. I
Yeah.
remember too, while I was there, I think a girl actually got pregnant, and it
No
was
way.
like, yes, it was like the biggest scandal. She got like escorted off. It was just, I will never forget it because it was so vivid, and it was almost like she did something like killed somebody. That's the
Yeah, of
level that they
course.
took it to.
Yeah,
And I didn't hear anything about the boy though. Like we
of
never knew
course.
who it was. No one got expelled. She got expelled.
Did she ever
Yeah.
have to get up and apologize in like chapel or anything?
So not at the school. She literally just left. Like she
Okay,
was
good.
gone. Like the very next day, she was gone. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Because like I have heard that like at they never made anyone do that at Bob Jones, but like I have heard that there were students that had to do that at Crown where they had to get up in
Yeah.
chapel. And I don't think it was ever any male students, but I'd heard
Mhm.
that they at least public example was made of various
Yeah.
students throughout the
Yeah.
years.
And the other thing that just came to me while we were talking, and again, I don't think I've actually talked about this either, but the year that I was there was a voting year. And that was
Mm.
wild, girl. That was wild because it
Oh,
was
I'm sure.
obviously all Republican. You were basically told that's how you're voting. They
Oh
had
yeah.
these huge screens, they bussed everybody over. And I thought I remember hearing a rumor about one kid being like a Democrat or whatever, but it was this huge thing. But just thinking about that now, about just that level of brainwashing of not only are we telling you what to do biblically, but we're telling you as an American citizen who you are voting for. It is just wild. Like I just remember like the mass crowd and them talking about it and just saying like this is what you're doing. And I was 18. I didn't know
Mhm.
anything different. So of course I did. So if you go look at my voting history, it's like that really wasn't my vote. I didn't know what I was
Right.
doing.
Yeah, it is true. Like people that don't come from that environment, they don't understand that like everything is decided for you. You are told by the
Yes.
pastor or the youth leader or whatever that this is how you're going to vote. This is what you're going to who you're going to a lot of them. This is who you're going to
Yeah.
marry. Like that was me. What I had
Yes.
to do. Or this is where you're going to go to college. This is what your vocation's going to be. You're told basically how to live your life, every
Yep.
aspect of it, from in the
Yes.
church and outside in your personal life.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just, and that's why I tell people, it's like, I've had people message me and be like, you're over sensationalizing.
I
You weren't
wish.
in a cult. You weren't, you're just making it bigger than what it was. And it's like, no, you're still in it, and that's why you can't see it. Once you get
Yeah.
out of it, then you can see it.
Yes.
It
Yes.
makes
Because
a big difference.
It does, because even me, it took me years to think that I was right in leaving. I genuinely thought that I was
Mhm.
evil for the longest time because that was our story. So
Yeah.
when Nick and when I finally got out, I ran away the first time when I was 19 years old. This is when Nick had gone back home from school. I had gone back home from school because I actually got sick a lot when I was there. The food was horrific.
Was it
I'm,
really?
oh my gosh, it was horrible. And so I didn't eat anything. And Nick would like get me food from off campus, and he was always worried. And that's a whole other subject because I think in that world, the only thing I could control was eating. So I really did genuinely control a lot of that. So I was really skinny to begin with. But I got pneumonia, like I got so many things while I was there. And so I ended up back at home just for being sick. And so we knew we wanted to be together, Nick and I, but his parents did not like me because I came from the world of where I still wore a little bit of makeup. My skirts were like below my knee versus to the floor, and his dad was a pastor. And so they met me one time when I came to visit. His cousin passed away, and so I went up there to be with him and stayed with his family. They hated me. I had never been hated in my life. And I know that sounds pompous, but it's not trying to be. It's more like I just get along with everybody because I'm really
Mhm.
chill. Like I really go with the flow and I love people. So it was
Yeah.
the first time in my life where I was like, what did I do? But I
Mhm.
think honestly, I kind of laugh about it now. And I said, I think his dad and his mom probably saw some of my spunk and probably didn't like that. But it was also his cousin that passed away was a child. I hadn't
Mhm.
been to a funeral since my own brother's funeral, and that was the first one. So I went
Ooh.
from being normal, really bubbly to I struggled. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to handle my emotions. I wasn't as bubbly. I wasn't as open. And I sang for their funeral too. Like I still did all the things, right? Because that's what we do. It doesn't matter how we feel, we just do. So his parents just hated me. And so when I came back, they were like, no, he wanted to move from Michigan to Tennessee to court me. Cause as we know, it's courting, it's not
Yes.
dating, right?
Yeah.
You got to court for marriage. But his parents were like, no, that's not happening. And so long story short, I felt and I journaled through all of this. And I kind of was writing in there that I was tired of people making decisions for me and I really wanted to be with Nick. And so I had made a decision at one point. I was like, I'm just doing it. I'm leaving. And so I made this whole plan. I didn't have a car because I was a girl. So I borrowed my family's car. I didn't have enough money for a plane, but I had enough money for a Greyhound bus, right? So
Oh
safe.
my gosh.
Not. So I took a Greyhound bus from Tennessee. I had distant relatives that lived in the Michigan area that weren't in IFB at all. They're totally out of it. Like that, they weren't even really religious. I reached out to
Wait,
them and
did
said,
your
hey,
parents know that you were leaving? Or
no,
did
I
you
ran
like
away. No, I
you ran
ran away.
away?
I ran away at 19. I ran away. So
No
I
way.
had, yes, in the middle of the morning, like wee hours of the night, I took my family's car, went to the airport. I left a note and said where the car was going to be. Because obviously, otherwise, I'm stealing it, kind of, right? Like, I didn't even think about that
Girl,
part. Yes.
were you like low key that like the Greyhound was gonna crash? Were you like,
I don't,
God's gonna judge
oh,
me? I'm never gonna make it to Nick. I'm going to die on this Greyhound.
I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it took clearly there was other things in me that I didn't realize because the strength that I had to be able to make that decision and leave, looking back at it now is wild. But I did. I
Good for
left.
you. Yeah,
So
that's
I
awesome.
took, so on the bus ride, it was wild. They had the police calling me. They couldn't do anything. I was 19, but they had the police calling me. His family, his mom, his dad, his sister. Oh, this gets really good. They were lying and saying that Nick was in jail just to get me to call because I wouldn't answer any of their calls. And they told us later, like, oh, well, that was a justified lie because we were trying to do God's work, of course. So I have all these people calling me, blowing up my phone. I'm sitting on a bus and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? And Nick is calling me because Nick kind of was trying to talk me out of it because he was scared for me. And this isn't safe. You're going to be by yourself. So I
Oh
make it all
my
the way up there.
gosh.
Yes.
Okay, wait a minute. So did you guys make this plan together or
No.
were you just did it on your own? You're like, okay, how did you know that like when you arrived, he was going to like
So Nick
pack
wasn't
up
in.
and leave with you?
No, and it took him a while. It actually
Oh
took
my
him a
gosh.
bit.
Okay. All right, keep going. This is
I was the
crazy.
strong one and I left and I made it up to my
Wow.
aunt and uncle's house. And by the next day, that day, they ended up coercing me into telling me where I was because you know the guilt is really strong, right? So the
Mhm.
very next day, my dad and my brother show up to collect me. Uh-huh. So my aunt and uncle were not in this cult, so I think they were really overwhelmed by what was going on. They're like, they didn't even know what to do. And given the person that I am in general, I didn't want to make trouble for anybody.
Yeah.
So I was guilted to go back. So I took a ride in my dad's car all the way back home again. And when I get back, the pastor's like, "You're going to the devil if you choose to go with Nick, and you need to repent." And I did. I journaled that I got right with God. I didn't make the right decisions in my life. And if that doesn't show you the amount of brainwashing and coercion that they do, nothing else will. So then, though, you'll see in my journal that very next day, it was like I had one of those moments of clarity that honestly only comes from just inner strength that I didn't know I had. And I journaled that if I didn't get out now, I'm never going to leave.
Mm.
And I made a decision. I'm done. I can't do this. I'm going to leave. And I went to my mom and I said, "Look, I want to be with Nick, but I want to work a bit. I don't have any money. I have nothing." So I'm like, "Can I live at home for a little bit while I do that?" She's like, "You have to talk to the pastor." So we had a meeting with the pastor at a Panera, and we sat down, my mom and the pastor, and I told him the same thing. And he turned away from me, didn't look at me again after that, looked at my mom and said, "She's a poison to your family. She needs to leave." And I got kicked out. So I
And
took,
and and just to put this in context for people, right? Like you weren't going out and having sex with people. You weren't doing drugs. You weren't doing like anything crazy. You just wanted to be with the love of your life. You just
yes,
wanted to be free to
yes,
be with the person that you loved and felt was your person, right? And so
yep,
that you can't,
yes,
as long as it's what you want, it's not godly. So,
yes, yep.
yeah.
Yep. And obviously, it's
Wow.
one of those moments looking back at it, being told that and being so dismissed. It took me a really long time to recover from like just that and like
Mhm.
how I was treated. But I packed up a suitcase, and my aunt, it was a different aunt, but like similar relatives. I called her and she paid for my Greyhound bus ticket to go back up there again. And I never forget it. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning and my parents dropped me off. But before then, oh my gosh, girl, this gets so good. Again, I was known as like the epitome of Christian girl. So when this went through, this reverberated in the church. I had people in my bedroom that night, women, praying over me
Oh,
so I wouldn't
sure.
so I wouldn't leave. It was like a vigil. And I'm in bed, all ready for bed with women praying over me. And I'm having to sit there. So again, I don't know how I stuck with this. I genuinely, but I'm one of those people, once I commit, oh, it's done. You're not
Mhm.
talking me out of it. I've now committed. I'm doing this. And I still left, obviously. But I only had a suitcase and I went up to my aunt. So Nick took a bit because remember, his dad's a pastor. They're, oh my gosh, they're a whole other level. So I'm at my aunt's and I'm talking to him, and he tried to leave at one point, but his dad actually blocked him from leaving. Even though he paid for his car and things like that, they were all like in his parents' name and it was just way more complicated. But
Mhm.
then at one point, his dad calls me. And I don't remember the whole conversation, but I remember that I used Bible verses to defend myself.
Hmm.
Again, I don't know where all this came from. I'm like, damn, I was spunky. So his dad hated that. He gets off the phone with me, calls Nick, and says, "I just talked to your blonde bombshell. You're no better. You can get out." And because of that phone call, he told Nick, "Get out. Like you two are made for each other." And that's a long story to short, about that too and why that was like
Wow.
that. But it was my big mouth that made it where he could leave too. So he was like, "Okay." So he went home, packed up all of his stuff, and left and met me at my aunt's house.
That's amazing. I just gotta say, girl, I absolutely adore you and your rebellious, spunky spirit
Right?
because I didn't have, I mean, I was very spunky and I was considered a Jezebel and I was considered
Yeah.
rebellious and I was considered trouble, but I didn't have the guts to do what you did. And obviously, I've talked about that in various episodes, but that very much could have been my life had I been as spunky as you.
Apparently.
Thankfully, yeah. Thankfully, it didn't happen because obviously, like I'm with a wonderful man now,
Yeah.
and things worked out the way that they did for the reasons that they did.
Yeah.
But I think that's amazing. I didn't have that much spunk until I left my ex when I was 26 years old. So I
Yeah.
finally got to the point where I was just like, enough is enough. I mean, just kind of like you did, like, okay,
Yes.
I'm done here. Like, and once you make that
Yeah.
decision, there's no going back. Like I'm the same exact way. So I get it.
Yeah.
But at 19, girl, cheers to
I
that.
know, I know. And I do, and to this day, it's one of my brightest shining moments is the moment that I stood up to his dad. And again, I look back at who I was and even the
Yeah.
struggles I had after, and I'm like, I clearly channeled some like inner goddess or something like that that gave me this because that's just not who I was. Again, I towed the line. I did everything I was told to do. And that's why it was talked about for so long after I left because they were like, if Kristen leaves, like,
Yeah.
what is this? And but you know what's honestly kind of cool? Not that the church is that much better, but they actually ended up changing some things because I started this ripple. Then a lot of the other teens started leaving too. And again, I think it's one of those
Wow.
things. I've
You
always
started a
been,
movement.
yes,
I love it.
I kind of low key love that. And I just, yeah, I didn't recognize it back then, but now that I'm getting older and I'm starting to actually like be like, okay, it's okay to say that this was an amazing thing. I didn't try to do that because that's actually how I got excommunicated. So when I was at my aunt's house, my best friend in the church calls me and because she heard. And she's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "Look, I don't want to tell you too much because I know I'm going to get you in trouble. So I'm okay. Like
Yeah.
everything's fine because you know how that goes." Well,
Hmm.
because she told or they found out that I talked to her, instant excommunication. My family dropped me. The church, like everybody was like, because I was then told to everybody that I was trying to get her out of the church too. And when you're doing that, that was considered excommunication worthy. Nick was excommunicated right away. It took a little bit for them to do that to me. But at that point, like everybody dropped me, my family, I'm a pariah. You lose everything. And I talk about that a lot because I feel like excommunication is really a power move. They just want you to come back. They want you, you were in a bubble and all you know are the people within that bubble. And so when you
Sure.
lose everybody in that bubble, including your family, and for me, because of, my parents were both pretty abusive, I wasn't missing them, but I was missing my brothers. And I have a younger brother. He was born after my other brother passed away, and he's 11 years younger than me. And he was like my child. He would sleep in bed with me growing up. I would sing to him at night. The same song I sang to him, I actually sang to my kids when they were little. And actually, I still
Aw.
sing it to my daughter. And when my brother's kids now, because we've reconnected, when his kids come, I actually sing it to them when they're here too. But he was like my
Oh, that's so
child.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so him was the one that really, really, it was hard because I loved him and I couldn't have anything to do with him because they were told by the pastor that they couldn't talk to me.
So how many years did you go not being able to communicate with your younger brother?
So it went back and forth, to be honest with you. Like it came to a point, I think this was maybe a year and a half in, and my mom would occasionally like check in when she wasn't supposed to. And there came a point where she called me and I was like, look, I said, what do I need to do? I'm like, I'm your daughter. You gave birth to me. How
Hmm.
can you let a man who's just a man tell you that you can't talk to your own daughter? That makes no sense to me. That makes no sense. And so I finally started standing up to myself and she started kind of saying, and so they would like secretly, and they would let my brother write letters to me. So it was kind of a slow process of just being like, no, you like this doesn't make sense. And so eventually it got to the point where they just didn't tell them that they were talking to me. So it was like kind of secret or whatever. And now I'll be honest with you, my dad has passed away a few years ago. Again, very complicated situation there. But my mom, we disconnected, or I disconnected from her not quite 4 years ago. She's just not healthy. And that's again another long story. And it ties into the religion. Nick doesn't talk to any of his family either because they're very hardcore, his siblings, his dad. And that's the hardest piece that a lot of people don't talk about. And a lot of people don't have the same experience because usually it's one or the other. It's not usually both people. That's
Hmm.
been one of the hardest pieces is that because we both were in it, we both lost. And so we've struggled with not having support. I think one of the things that was the hardest is being young and not only not knowing the world, because the world wasn't made for us, because we weren't made to be in this world. We were made to be in a bubble. But
Right.
when the hard times come and you look for that soundboard, that older adult that you trust, neither one of us had that. And
Hmm.
so there were so many bumps along the way because we had to figure everything out ourselves. And so it was really like there were some really, really hard times that if we didn't have each other, it would have been way worse. But it makes it way harder when you do have both because the loss is much bigger.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard to lose that sense of community just within like your church family, right? But then to lose your actual biological family on both sides, that had to be hard, especially at such a young age, too. And you're
Yes.
like, we
Yes.
just want to be together. We just love each
Yes.
other. We just want to be married. Like,
Yes.
what is wrong with that?
Yes, and his parents, like I said, they were very vindictive. So this is a story that I actually don't think I've shared in a public way. But again, we talked. I'm like at the point in my life where I'm like, this is what it is. It's just
Yeah.
truth. So Nick, he had a car, right? Because he was a boy, he had a car, and he paid for his insurance, but his parents were on the policy. They disconnected it, didn't tell him. Then we lived in a really small town. They called the police station, gave them his information, and said, he's driving around without insurance. I am not shitting you. We get pulled over, our car gets impounded, okay, because they disconnected, called the police. Now it gets crazier. I will tell you again, I can admit to all this now, not that I did anything wrong, but he had a friend of his that was outside of the church that knew we were getting married and gave him a bottle of champagne. I was 19. I had that in my purse. If they had found that,
Oh,
could you
no.
imagine the repercussions?
Yeah.
They didn't, and it just ended up being the car. But that's the level.
Yeah.
Instead of his parents being like, oh, just let them, whatever, if they really believe the whole, God's going to have his way, they would have just let us be. But instead, they were vindictive. And they not only did that, but they wrote what I like to call as the book. They wrote a book on both me and Nick, and they like got information from my parents. They put information, anything that they thought we did wrong, they put it in here and they mailed it to not only family members within the IFB, but all of our relatives that were outside of it. So they not only took away our immediate family, but they took away our extended family too. So now I'm terrified all of the time about what people are thinking of me because I'm already like that by nature. I'm just
Yeah.
very hyper aware of what people think, probably because of growing up the way we did.
Yeah.
But like all of my extended family, my aunts and my uncles, my grandparents that were in Illinois that I loved, I didn't reach out to anybody because now I'm like, I don't know what they think of me. Everybody's talking about me. I'm this horrible person. So for years, I can't even begin to tell you the toll that that took because my grandfather was like my dad because my dad wasn't really a father.
Hmm.
And it took right before my grandfather passed away to actually finally tell him what happened. It took that long. And my son was 2 because my mom always used it against me that she told them that, I just ran away. I made this decision, said all of these lies. And when I finally got the courage to say something, unfortunately, it was when he was diagnosed with cancer and he was gone within a few months. And to this day, I don't know if he really heard what I said. I hope he did. But he was sitting there and I just spilled everything. And I was like, this wasn't true. These were the things that were told about me. And even my uncle, years later, when I finally told my story, he's like, your mom painted this totally different picture. And I think that was the hardest piece is that everybody was telling my story. Everybody was telling my story, but it wasn't my story. It was lies. And it was everything that made them look like these great people and me look like I'm this horrific girl who, what all I wanted to do was be married to someone that I loved. Legit. That is all I wanted. But
Hmm.
that's what they took away from me is they took away not only my immediate family, but any sense of security that I had for years was just gone. And the level of terrified I was that anybody could know this information made it where Nick and I cut ourselves off. Like we didn't really talk to people. We worked, we came home. Like it really took a long time for us to reach out to anybody because they just created such fear in children. Like we were 19, like we were
Yeah.
kids. We weren't really adults. And so that's why when I said they took it to a different level, they really did, unfortunately.
Yeah. So you guys had to like protect yourself and go into survival mode and just shut everybody out. Like
Yep.
anybody that was already shutting you out, you're shutting everybody in addition to that because you're like, I don't know who to trust, right? You're just
Yes.
trying to like maintain your dignity and your safety and all the things because you're like, what's next? They're calling the police on me. Like, this is ridiculous. Over insurance. I mean, it's just, and what parent does that to their own child?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
that is people need to understand the level of control that this is why it's a cult, guys.
Yep.
And I say it all the time is like I know that we have secret listeners who are still in the IFB who maybe don't consider their church a cult. But if you're listening to this and a lot of this sounds familiar to you, like if you don't still think it's a cult, then maybe you're just brainwashed and you need to get out of it so that you can see clearly because it truly is. I mean, every aspect of your life is controlled. Um,
Yes.
so I'm interested to know, like, when you guys got out, now you're like living on your own, you've cut everybody off or everyone's cut you off. What did that look like within your view of God and spirituality or Christianity at that point? Like, did you guys continue to go to church somewhere? Did you find a church? Did you explore other religions? How did that work?
So we, for a little bit, went to like a non-denominational church for a very hot minute, and then we bounced around to a couple. But we kept finding, and this was the hard thing. People asked so many questions. I wanted to go in, I wanted to go out because I missed the
Mhm.
music mainly. I
Sure.
missed, because it was all I knew, right? And so, but the questions, and because of the fear, I didn't want them to know anything because I was scared of what they would think about us and our story. And so
Yeah.
the fear was so loud, I can't even begin to describe it. And so that didn't last very long. I will say, unfortunately, and these were the only accidents that Nick was in his whole life, but he had two car accidents, like almost back to back. And the last one, our car got totaled. And again, we barely had anything. We were barely making ends meet. Thankfully the church that we went to, someone let us borrow like this really old car where you'd like pump the gas and like the license plate in the back. It was that old. But if we didn't have that at least little community, we wouldn't have had any help.
Hmm.
So we did do a little bit of that, but when that whole car situation was happening, again, I journaled through this, and I'm glad I did because I have a lot of issue with like memory retention. But during that time when our cars got told, I believed that God was punishing us. Like I genuinely believed that. And then when he was trying to get a loan for the car, because we were kids again, like we didn't have credit history, we didn't have any of that stuff. And the
And they don't
people that
even
we,
teach that though in the IFB.
no,
They don't even teach you
no,
how to be financially responsible. They don't.
yep, nope.
So, yeah.
No, not at all. Exactly. And unfortunately, we just didn't have any support to like co-sign. Like we just didn't have anybody. And so I remember like sitting there praying, like, please God, don't, please allow us to be able to get a car. Like, I know we've done all these wrong things. And so again, I was like journaling all of this and just to see my thought process and how much guilt I held on to and I thought was mine to hold. So we did that a little bit with churches. That didn't last long because of all of the fear. And then we just didn't do anything. My husband, Nick, he questioned everything growing up and he never really believed in it. It was something that was a source of contention. So when I said that it's complicated, like his with his dad and things, Nick was always kind of known as, the he never believed. He always balked the system, right? So he never did. And he went into a little bit of atheism for a bit. Agnostic is kind of where he's landed now. Myself, I went from really believing to not really believing to being like, I really don't know if I believe in God in general, but I've always been more of a spiritual person. And I actually talked about this today on my channel on TikTok. Is I was saying that I look at the world around me and I love the moon and the stars and how vast the galaxy is. And my brain is always wanting to know the why and how complicated things are. And I look at myself and then I look at that compared to everything. And I just have to believe that there's something more than me. So I
Hmm.
would say more agnostic, but I also will say that I'm very much a humanist in the fact that I believe in humans as a species, that I feel like we're all connected, that I feel like even though there's so much loud things going on and there's all these bad things, that at the end of the day there's way more good and way more beautiful people than there are bad, and at the end of the day I believe in that. So that's what I said today is I'm like agnostic, humanist, lots and lots of love, which sounds really cheesy, but that's how I live my life. I live my life by the rules of, if you need my help, I genuinely do not care what you politically believe in, what religion you are, what nationality you are. I just want you to know that I'm going to help you because I love you, because you are somebody that is, you're in need. I'm going to help you, period. There's nothing beyond that. There's no like, I need something in return. That's just how I live my life. And that's where I've landed. And that kind of brings me into, because I told you I really wanted to talk about, I was a stay-at-home mom for a hot minute after Nick graduated from school, because I was the breadwinner actually for a while he was in school. And then when he graduated, I took some time off. And when I went back to work, I was like, I want to do something that makes a difference. And so I fell into this nonprofit. It's local, and we help single moms, mainly single moms. It's any single caretaker actually that wants to go back to school. But most of the people that we're helping are coming from below the poverty line. A lot of them are coming from broken homes or domestic violence. But we wrap around them and get them to college. But working for this organization, I'm telling you, in the last year and a half has done more for me in that year and a half than all of my trauma therapy. And I only say that to say that I'm putting into practice the things that I would have wanted. There's a couple of moms, and they're going to know if they listen to this. I know I'm talking about them. I adore them. They're our youngest. And when they first started, they were 19, and I saw myself in them. And I just remember that if I had had just one person that was
Mhm.
willing to step up to be there, and if I
Mhm.
can be that one person for somebody, that's worth it for me. So it's Heartland Scholar House. They're amazing. But I love that I can be that for somebody else when I didn't have that. And to me, that makes everything worth it. So I've chosen, instead of, I could have gone the other direction. I have every right to hate. I have every right to be jaded and be like, I everything sucked. I had abuse in my home. There are so many things that I could check off a box and be like, I have every reason to be that way. I'm
Mhm.
choosing to live with love because I want people to experience what I didn't growing up. I didn't grow up in a home where I felt loved or I felt safe. And I want people to know what it feels like, the things that I didn't. So I'm choosing a different path, and I'm choosing to lead with love instead of hate.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And you're choosing to break that cycle that you were raised in, right? Which
Yes.
is amazing. And it's a lot harder to do than people think. So I loved what you said about where you are spiritually and just that you consider yourself more of an agnostic. So David and I had several discussions about this on TikTok lives, and one of the things that he had said is within the last year of him, editing my podcast, he's listened to a lot of cult survivors, not just IFB people, but from different various cults. And so he's kind of learned a lot about God and Christianity specifically. And he's kind of come to the conclusion that he would consider himself an atheist at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were talking one night on a live, and because I would consider myself a believer, but it kind of clicked one night when he said to me, if the God that I'm supposed to believe in is the God that I've heard about over the last year, then I
Yes.
then I'm an atheist. I don't believe in that
Yes.
God. And he goes, but he does believe in a higher power. And
Yep.
whether you call that God, whether you call it the universe, whatever, like
Yeah.
it is, that's what. And so then I really started to ponder that. And I'm like, you know what? I actually agree with him. So
Yes.
I wouldn't consider myself an atheist. I wouldn't consider myself an agnostic. I would consider myself a believer in God, just not the defined God that we were taught.
Right.
So that's where I land at this point. I mean,
Yes.
call it what you want, but you know,
Yes.
I just
And
sometimes labels can be a little
yes,
scary. It's
that's
like
what,
I don't want to say I'm an atheist because
yes.
I do believe there's a God, but it's just not the God that was defined for me my whole life. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's what I said in mine too, is I'm like, I hate labels. And I think because we were labeled, we're like,
All the
I
time.
don't, I don't want a label. So that's why I'm like, well, I'm a little bit of this and I'm a little bit of this and I'm a little bit of that. And you know what? That's the beauty of autonomy, is that we now have the choice to believe what we want.
Hmm.
And I'm a true believer in that I'm not going to judge you unless you're judging me first, right? Like if you're going to come at me with religion and things, then you're going to get that same energy back because I'm going to defend myself. But if you're choosing to have religion, Great. If that brings you joy, if that brings you peace, that's amazing. But know at the end of the day, we all have our own paths. We all have our own way of thinking, and that's what makes it beautiful. Is we're all different. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah. So, as we wrap up, I just have one final question for you. So, if you were to sit in front of yourself and imagine that the 19-year-old Kristin is sitting there in front of you, what would you say to her today?
We made it. Literally,
Yes.
we came a really, really long way, and that I'm so proud of her. And I'm so proud that with all of the things that around her that should have made her never believe in herself, that somehow you decided to leave all of it because you knew that was the right thing to do. So I'm super proud of her too. I'm super proud of me now too, but I'm super proud of the girl that I that was given nothing and made it a lot.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This has been so fun.
Yeah,
We need to do more episodes together for sure because
we
there's so many
do.
subjects we could talk about within the
Yes.
IFB, but thank you for trauma bonding with me.
Yes, anytime. That's wonderful. Next time we'll have to like get a cocktail and name it like I don't know
Yes.
what trauma bonding.
Yes. I love that. Oh my
Yes,
gosh. Okay, now
we
my
sure.
wheels are spinning.
We can have this trauma bond cocktail hour. Join us.
Yes.
Get your favorite coffee or tea or alcoholic beverage and join
Yes.
us for some trauma bonding.
Yes. Oh, I'm so doing that. We're doing that. We're going to set a
I
date.
love
We're
it.
doing that for sure. Well,
I
thank
love
you,
it.
Kristin, for being here with us today.
Thank you.
If there's one thing this conversation proves, it's this. Walking away doesn't just cost you your beliefs, it can cost you your entire world. But staying, that can cost you yourself. And that's the part nobody in those environments wants to talk about. Kristin's story isn't just about loss, it's about rebuilding from nothing. No blueprint, no approval, no safety net. Just two people choosing each other and figuring out life, family, and even God in their own terms. If you're listening to this and something inside of you is stirring, questioning, doubting, pulling at the edges of what you've always known, don't ignore that. That's where everything starts. If this episode hit you, share it with someone who's in it or somebody who's trying to find their way out. And as always, stay curious, stay bold, and never be afraid to outgrow what you were never taught to question. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening. Before we close out, I just want to share a quick reminder. The stories told on this podcast are personal experiences and perspectives. They're shared to create awareness and connection, not as medical, legal, or mental health advice. Some of the conversations here focus on abuse, trauma, and other heavy topics, so please take care of yourself while listening. It's always okay to pause, skip an episode, or step away if you need to. And if anything we talked about brings something up to you, we encourage you to reach out to a trusted professional or a support resource. You don't have to carry any of this alone. Thank you for listening.